All right, now we're live.
Okay, this is the Public Safety Committee meeting. It's 10 a.m. Thursday, March 4th, 2021. The meeting is virtual due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All members are present. Rough morning already. And the public has been notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. First item on the agenda is public comments. Ron, as I understand, we have one participant live on public comments.
We do. Give me just a second.
Yeah, sure.
Except may I say that the first order of business is the approval of minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve all previous meeting minutes.
I'll second. Nicole, we need a roll call on that.
You can just do all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Ward, did you have an opinion about the minutes? Are they acceptable for you? Councilmember Ward, how did you feel about the minutes?
They're fine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll move to public comment. Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Aaron, are you there? Can you hear us?
I'm here. Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
Aaron,
you are
you're
now
live.
live.
Perfect. Well, yeah. Thanks for letting me participate today. As I've expressed in the emails, this is just regarding the loading and unloading zones on Front Beach. So as you all know, but in case there's anybody else listening, I'm with Charlestown Hotels. We manage the Palms Ocean Front Hotel and the Seaside Inn. And so our guests use the street parking, the loading zones to load and unload. So with those moving to permanent parking post 2 p.m., our guests are not going to have anywhere to load and unload. And if they are in the municipal parking lot, it's going to be a long trek and potential safety issues for them to get to the lobby to check in. And I think it's really going to hurt overall traffic on Front Beach. When we get in peak periods, even like this last weekend when the weather was really nice, it felt like summer. And with cars stopping in the middle of the road or delivery trucks, not having enough room to stop, it's really going to hold things up. So my recommendation, I understand that the need for additional parking, but my recommendation would be to change the loading zone time until 5 p.m. This will allow our guests to have an area to load and unload at check-in time, which is at 4 p.m. Additionally, a lot of deliveries we get, especially on Fridays, are post 4 p.m. because some of them also service Wild Dunes. So typically they'll go to Wild Dunes first, and they're not able to get to us until 4 or 5 p.m. closer towards the end of the day.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, we did have 71 written submissions for public comments. Those will be available per the norm on IOP.net. Next item on the agenda is old business update on the Front Beach loading zones and parking. And I don't know if Chief Desiree would like to give that update. Chief, looks like you're volunteering.
I can chime in on this. So if you've been down there, you see that they are marked. We did paint them orange so they stand out a little bit more, but within the orange lines, there are white lines to indicate parking spots. These signs are currently up to indicate that it is loading zone from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. We really wanted to put it back on after having the conversation with Mr. Rowland to determine if that was something that the committee wanted to revisit the times or not. But that's really the only thing. They're done. We can go back and paint the times in the loading zones, but I didn't want to do that if there was a potential that it would change, because that's a more permanent approach.
And Philip, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron's comments dead on. If check-in time's 4-ish, I mean, it seems like it would make sense to push back that timing to me. I know we just made this decision mid last year, but it seems logical to me to change it personally.
I would like to ask Councilman Ward, who frankly is much more intimate with Front Beach than myself. But, you know, my understanding was that the hotel does have some opportunity of their own for loading and unloading, and that this would be incremental to that. So, Councilman Ward, do you have an opinion on it? You're way more intimate with Front Beach and the practice there than I would be.
I just agree with our guest speaker. It's makes a lot more sense to push it back to 5. And in my opinion, it's causing problems right now.
Okay. So just by way of procedure, do we need to vote on making that change? And if so, would someone like to make a motion?
Well, I think we need a little bit more discussion and clarification about what it is that we would be changing, because the decision from the committee and council last year was to change all of the loading zones on Front Beach, which are included on the ocean side of Ocean Boulevard, closest to the water, if you will, and you know, change them to be loading zones between 8 and 2. There was some discussion at that time about the potential impact that this would represent to the hotel check-in. And at that point, and Chief, chime in if I misspeak, but the discussion at that point was that they do have some capacity under the Palms Hotel to potentially accommodate folks driving in, unloading before they go and park. I do understand that the other location that they manage doesn't have that ability, and the concerns with people still parking along the road, on the road to unload, and that creating traffic impact. Is the goal or the decision of this committee to recommend to council to change all of the loading zones, change the date of all of the loading zones, or just those that are closest to the location of the seaside inn that doesn't have any other option?
So I'm just going to speak from a practicality. It's clearly easier to change all of the loading zones, although there's some financial impact. I don't think it's an overwhelming financial impact. But without looking at a map or understanding, you know, is the requirement for 2 parking places in front of Seaside? Is the requirement for more? I mean, we're flying a little bit blind on understanding what the actual requirement is. I think for ease, if we're willing to change it, the ease would be to change the entire thing and not overthink this. That's just my view.
I would agree, Randy.
Yeah. What is the goal here?
Well, the goal, as stated, was to allow a place without impeding traffic that people could check in to the hotel and unload their luggage. When I first had discussions with Desiree about it, you know, it wasn't clear about the Seaside Inn portion. It was clear about, you know, the Palms having some access on their own, and were we just, you know, creating incremental space and giving up parking revenue and the original intent of passing this? Like I said, I don't have a opinion largely in one direction or the other. I don't personally wish to interfere with the hotel's business. I think they're an asset to the community. So, you know, Desiree, I mean, please do share. You've looked at this a lot more than we have. If you were, you know, weighing in as administrator and making the changes, it would just appear to me the simple thing is to change the 3-hour window that we're talking about. If
Yes,
it's
that would be the simplest thing. I have a question for Chief Cornett. How many parking spaces are we talking about between the area, the loading zone area in front of closest to the Windjammer and the one that's closest to towards 14th Avenue?
Total parking spots that became available by doing this, I believe, were about 10 parking spots. Prior to doing this, Seaside had 2 for them, and Palms had 1 or 2 that they were using as well for them. And that's, but I would say for a enforcement practicality as well, keeping them all the same prevents any confusion for any person that's there and would alleviate somebody getting a ticket when they thought they were doing the right thing.
Well, I'm not an expert on Front Beach. I'm an expert at staying in hotels, having spent a career. It just seemed to me that you're going to have 3 at a time checking in and check-in time at a minimum, right? So if you just make that assumption, you've got 6 of 10 occupied, on a fairly regular basis already. So by procedure, I think we should probably make a motion to change it to 5 p.m. and move it to full council. So I'll make the motion to change the time to 5 p.m.
Yeah, I'll second.
Any comments beyond that? Nicole will vote on that.
You can just do all in favor for committee. You're fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to new business, item 5A, discussion and consideration of the July 4th fireworks show. So as everyone knows, we did not have the fireworks last year. It was a $35,000 item in the budget, as I recall. I believe Desiree is in the budget again for $35,000. And I think by way of this committee, I think it's a full council discussion, whether we want to proceed with that in the Ways and Means discussion item. I know, or I doubt there's going to be a consistent view on whether to have them or not, given where we are with COVID. I would like to hear from administration in the committee meeting as to the position of the city and the employees and the comfort level, given, as a state and as a country, we're kind of all over the map with COVID right now.
Yes, the reason we brought this before committee and ultimately up to council is if the city decides to move forward with having a 4th of July fireworks show, we have to execute a contract pretty soon. We received a call from the shooter that we've used in the past 3 years, and he's getting booked up.
Let's not call it a shooter.
Oh, that is a technical term, believe it or not.
Chief Cornell doesn't like that.
I'm sorry. We'll find another fun word. A lot of the businesses, according to the information he relayed to us, a lot of the businesses that do provide that type of service in the area have gone out of business because of COVID. He has not. So we've been such a good client to them for the past several years that he wanted to check whether or not he needed to release that date to other communities or other events. So last year, you're correct, City Council earlier in the year had approved entering into a contract with this particular vendor. That was ultimately canceled due to COVID and the restrictions that had been in place as part of the city's efforts to curb and limit the spread of COVID in our community. This year, this FY21 budget did include the same expense that we budget every year for the show and other incidentals. So we need to have some direction about cities, where the city council is on the approval of this expenditure. Ultimately, the city staff will implement whatever council decides. I will say that the 4th of July weekend does represent significant resources, not only in our people infrastructure, but also financial resources. So it's not that something that staff is used to it. We have done it for many years, but it does. I do want to highlight that it does take a lot of work and a lot of effort from the staff to work that event. It's not only that event, it's a whole weekend.
So Desiree, I'm going to be a little more pointed and specific on. So, we're at a point in COVID where a lot of things are personal choice. As we know, Governor McMaster opened us up wide open this week, lifting restrictions, right? So there's plenty of personal choice around where people go and what they do. The personal choice that doesn't exist is with city staff, right? So on a personal level, where I'm coming from is the comfort level of staff that doesn't have the same choice points to decide whether to attend fireworks or not, or participate in that weekend. And for me, that's the relevant data point. If I choose to go to fireworks, I can do that. If I choose to stay home, I can do that. Y'all don't have that choice. So
No,
yeah,
and it is an all hands on deck
Yeah.
for not only the fire department, but the police department. We have recreation department staff assist with crowd control, parking management on Front Beach. So it is all hands on deck. And you know, in the past, the city didn't even approve vacation requests for that
Yeah.
time, because our resources are limited as they are. And you know, we want to make sure that we have everybody available. So it does require a lot of resources from the city. Again, if we have done it, if this is the will of council, we'll continue to do it. But I don't think anybody is, I don't think this takes anybody by surprise, just the amount of effort and work that this represents for the staff.
Jimmy?
Thank you, sir. Desiree, what's the total cost when we put in the all the overtime and additional payroll cost for staff? It's not the total cost for the fireworks show is not just $35,000. It's much more than that. Can you give us a rough estimate about how much that is?
If I had to, pick a number, I would say that I would increase that number by about 10,000. Just to be on the safe side, to again cover overtime expenses for the staff. I do want to say, I don't want to miss mentioning that the fireworks show is a big draw for our tourism industry here on the island. People book way ahead of time to be on the island for that date. The hotel, the people who rent their homes. So it is a big draw, not only for short-term rentals, the hotels, but also our restaurant community and commercial district. There are no current restrictions on the island in terms of accommodations or crowding on the beach or event sizes. So unless that's the case, this would be, I expect this 4th of July to just be like any other year. For better or worse, because again, the pandemic is still not done with us, although we might be done. Ron said that this morning. I thought it's funny. We might be done with it, but it's still not over.
Jimmy?
Sorry, but this is my last questions. 2 questions. What time is high tide this year on July 4th? Number 1, and number 2. Have you any indication what surrounding communities are doing about their fireworks shows?
Jimmy, I happen to have the tide chart that I've not done anything with.
Well, you're always prepared, Randy.
I didn't have that on purpose.
I'm looking at I don't know the tide times.
July 4th, 4:57 p.m.
That's high tide?
Yes.
So low tide would be around 10 p.m.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which is about the time, I think in the past, 9:30 is the time where the shows usually go off.
Okay, thank you for that. Have you heard anything from other communities, Desiree?
I have not, but I can certainly reach out to our neighbors to see. I'm sure everybody's having the same conversation right now, whether to do it or not. But I don't know for sure.
But you needed a decision today, or some indication from this committee going forward, correct?
Yes, and this would go to Ways and Means, so it would be final, the final approval. And I've already indicated this to the fireworks vendor, that if we're moving forward, he would have a final decision by council by the end of this month. So if you all feel comfortable making or not making a recommendation, we can put this. We happen to have the chair of Ways and Means in this committee, so we can put it in the Ways and Means agenda for more discussion. Regardless, if that's what the committee wants to do.
Desiree, I would recommend more discussion. I will tell you, my personal angst is the imposition on staff, where we have to acknowledge there's people that do have immune deficiencies and issues to deal with, And I don't want to encumber staff with something when we're still in the midst of a pandemic. It has nothing to do with finances, I think, from a financial perspective. We've done this before. It's accretive to the community overall and the attraction of tourists, and it's a well-anticipated event by residents. But this acknowledgement that the pandemic is not over, I think is something that's worthy of discussion and further discussion with full council. Philip, please.
Yeah, Randy, and I would agree. And Desiree, I think, people are going to come here July 4th, whether we have fireworks or not, certainly. In my opinion, I'll just tip my hand because I would say the same thing at Ways and Means next week when we have it. I think it's worth one more year not doing this personally. And, by then, I know the governor also lowered the age for vaccine, but there's no supply. So you think, okay, by July, are people going to be vaccinated? Who knows? Is a broader group of population going to be vaccinated? Maybe. But, we have to make plans now, Desiree, to your point. My opinion, I think we ought to cancel it this year, but we can take it to Ways and Means and have a broader conversation.
And Desiree, I'm completely willing to make a motion that we end the discussion now and save everybody the angst of going through a further discussion. So I'll do that at the risk of it not being seconded or not going forward. I'll make a motion that we do not proceed with fireworks this year.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Question, is there an expectation that we include this in Ways and Means next week? I think it would go before City Council at the end of the month.
Yeah, I would take it straight to council personally. Given this vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
You okay with that, Desiree?
Sure.
Trying to make it easy. All right, moving
Well, let me take that back. If we have it at Ways and Means, it would give us the ability to notify the vendor at least a week in advance. So that might be helpful for him if the majority of council does decide not moving forward. That way, I think he'd appreciate that.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's fine, Desiree. Moving to item 5B, discussion of FY22 operating budget for the police and the fire departments.
Excuse me, sir. If you don't mind, if we could go back just for a second, I'd just like to voice my opinion that even when it goes to full council, I'm going to vote against going forward with it.
Yeah. Ditto.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, now item 5B, discussion of FY22 operating budget for the police and fire departments.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go through some of the highlights for both the police and fire department budgets for FY22. We have already discussed the capital projects fund last meeting, so I won't touch I won't talk or get too much into that component unless there are any questions. But I'll just go and start with just regular operating for police. Salary and wages assumes a 2% increase, merit pool increase for FY21. That number does not include the FY20 2.5 merit increase that was not implemented last year due to COVID. The personnel committee has made a recommendation to full council that it's considered for reinstatement or at least some component of it. This year, we'll be having those discussions with the Ways and Means Committee at their workshop later this month. But this number only includes that assumption of the 2% increase for this year. Retirement and group health insurance, you can see that there's a 1% increase under retirement expense compared to FY 2021 and a 5% increase for group health insurance. So that is what's driving that 4% increase from the forecast FY 21. And that is only a 6-month impact, just for the record. You all know that the way that our calendar year and fiscal year operate, we've included the 6-month impact. The other one you'll see in FY23. Vehicle fuel line number 19. Was there a question or no? I'll keep going. Line 19, vehicle fuel and oil. There is no fuel cost increase included in this forecast and in the budget, but based on new information and new numbers, that will be included in the next draft. So we're working through those numbers right now. Line item 24, IT equipment, software, and services. This is a new IT account. So we have allocated some expenses that had previously been allocated to non-capital tools and equipment and maintenance and service contracts, the 2 line items below. And we have just moved them into a new IT account that's going to be managed by our new IT vendor and City Hall. And we have that for every department. There is a new item under IT equipment and software and services, Nova Time scheduling module. The total cost of that is $18,000. So we split that evenly between police and fire. This will allow them to more efficiently handle swabs, the vacation requests, and just scheduling in general. So that is a new item in FY22. Under non-capital tools and equipment, we have included the cost to transition all personnel weapons from a Glock 40 caliber pistol to a Glock 9mm pistol. And I'll just stop right there and ask Chief Cornett to provide a little bit of insight into his request and this decision to transition into this type of weapon. Thank you,
Certainly.
Chief.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The transition from the 40 caliber to the 9mm follows suit with a federal study that was done a few years ago where they found that the 9mm are working quite well in the law enforcement realm, and the ammunition is cheaper, and they have seen an increase in shot placement during training. And that is just as important as anything else, because we want to make sure that should we ever have to use these, the hope is that we don't, but if we do, that we are putting rounds where they are supposed to go. And so more accuracy is more important. Also, the Academy has switched to 9mm. And with that, anytime we send somebody right now to the Academy, we have to send 800 rounds of ammunition for them to qualify. If we switch to 9mm, that's provided through the Academy. Also, a lot of our neighboring jurisdictions are switching to 9mm. And so to be compatible with our partners, we want to switch to the same caliber weapon that they're using so that we have more interchangeability between agencies.
So the expense after the trade-in of the existing weapons, it's about a $6,000 expense. Also included in this account are 7 training pistols, mask, and simulation rounds to assist training for our police department personnel. I'll go to maintenance and service contracts. Again, just highlighting that some of these expenses, you see a reduction there in an addition there. And some of these items have been moved to the new account under IT equipment. Nothing new there compared to FY21. I'll go through capital projects fund, Ron, the following page. Maintenance and service contracts, you can see there a building maintenance contingency to address maintenance items on every city building. This is a new number in FY21 because we were going through the building repair project. We didn't include any funds there. But now moving forward, every year we'll continue to include 1% of the insured value. And these costs are split between 50-50 between the capital projects fund for the fire department and police department. Under capital outlay, we have the replacement of 1 patrol SUV. We have 3 scheduled this year, and we have 1 in the capital projects fund, and then the other 2 are included in state aid tax accommodations fund below. Under hospitality tax fund, we have the replacement of an LSB vehicle for $17,000 and 50% of the expense associated with a new license plate reader to assist police department with parking and parking enforcement along Front Beach. A new addition to the police department includes the annual cost for cloud-based system for in-car and body-worn cameras. Chief, could you give us a little bit more insight or share a little bit more insight about the efficiencies that this will represent to your department? We talked about it a little bit under the 10-year capital plan, but just for the record or anybody, because it is a $50,000 addition to this year's budget.
Certainly. It is exactly what we talked about in the capital outlay. It will be a 10-year agreement that we keep with them, and that makes sure that we are getting the new equipment as it comes out. It's all included in that price. As new body worn cameras are available, they would swap out every few years or every 2 years. Every 4 or 5 years, the motor vehicle or mobile vehicle recorders in the cars will be replaced and swapped out for the newer and updated equipment. This also gives us the ability to store this in a cloud instead of on site so that we can download that information faster to get it for FOIA requests or for requests associated with court proceedings.
Thank you, Chief. I'll go to the Victims Fund. The only change there is an increase of about $1,800 to add a phone for a second officer that also serves and assists the victim advocates office for the police department. Are there any questions with the police department budget
Yeah,
before we
Desiree,
move forward to fire department?
Yeah, I have one that for the chief. So when you did your non-live fire training or live fire training with fake rounds down at the Morgan Creek Grill, we had a discussion regarding the need to borrow the equipment from Charleston County. So, you know, a couple of things, and appreciating the change from 40 caliber to 9. You know, I think people need to understand training isn't just at the academy. It's overall purchase of those rounds, and also the additional training, which I thought was awesome at the Morgan Creek Grill. Several of us went down there and watched it. Chief, why do we not have a request? This is your opportunity to ask for more. To have, you know, a supply of those, I'm just going to call them fake guns for this purpose, that are essential training tools. Your opportunity to ask for more.
They are actually included in this budget. That was under, I got to find out where we put them now.
Non-capital.
That's correct. We have $5,000 put in there for the training pistols and the equipment to go for that. That's specific for that training equipment.
Okay, and for those that have no idea what I'm talking about, Ron Hanna was so kind as to be the target for that training, and he looked like he'd been in a paintball war when it was over. But I think it was well conducted, well appreciated by our officers, and should be an essential part of our training. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ron, for target practice. Yeah.
Literally anytime.
They wanted me to do it, and I was like, not happening. Let's try Ron. All righty. Well, I'll go forward and we'll move forward with fire department for FY22 operating budget. You can see that the salary and wages, the total forecast for fire department for personnel is less than the budget number. So we spent a little bit more time. We're still spending a little bit more time refining these numbers, but two reasons that may be impacting the forecast is the forecast included a vacation payout for Chief Graham when she retired. And it also included military leave that the city had to pay for an employee, plus the replacement of the employee. So that's why it's higher than what we are currently budgeting for FY22. So we're doing a little bit more work on this, Debbie and I, looking at these numbers to refine them and understand what's impacting that forecast. But the FY22 assumes full staffing. This first draft of the budget does not yet include any provision for adding any positions. That is something that was discussed by full council as part of the fire chief hiring process. Some needs that the fire department may have. So that's something that we're going to be working before the next draft of the budget to have some numbers prepared for ways and means before that workshop. But just wanted to make sure you all know that this just includes status quo as is number of staffing, nothing more.
Hey, Desiree, I might mention at the same time for those interested, we had Personnel Committee yesterday and a fairly extensive conversation around the wage study, which, you know, we don't have conclusions at this point, but there is likely to be adjustments as we go towards full budget anyway around what that wage study shows. And without belaboring that, it was a fairly lengthy discussion. I thought good discussion yesterday.
Correct. That's a good point. FY22, these numbers do not include any merit pool or any salary adjustments for FY22, but we do expect to include those as the wage and compensation process continues to progress. Line 2020 about vehicle fuel, just the same thing I mentioned in the police department. This does not include any increase in the forecast or the budget, but it will be increased based on actual. A couple of things that I want to highlight under IT equipment, software, and services. Here you can see the 50% cost or expense associated with the new scheduling software module and a target solutions training software for subscription. This budget actually includes a $20,000 addition to employee training that you can see on line item 34 for more offsite training in specialized areas for our fire department. Under capital projects, you can see that this budget includes a replacement of personal escape systems for all employees. This is a new addition. You can see how that line item has increased by $9,000 from previous years. The maintenance and service contracts, here's where you can see the 50% cost of the 1% insured value for deferred maintenance for the public safety building. And it also includes funds for the fire station too. So that one is a little bit higher than the police department because of the two stations. Capital projects, capital outlay. Ron, I'm on the first page. There, thank you. Capital projects, capital outlay included here is one of the pickup trucks that are slated to be replaced in FY22. Also 2 positive pressure ventilation fans for $10,500 and the replacement of the engine 1001 light tower for $16,500. A big expenditure that we talked about in capital projects last month included the replacement of the self-contained breathing apparatus for the fire department. This is something that has been included in the 10-year capital plan, and the city has been saving towards this expenditure. 66% of that cost is included in capital projects. The remaining is split between accommodations tax funds. Go to Muni A tax. You can see in the non-capital tools and equipment line for $26,000. That includes the purchase of 18 sets of anti-exposure suits for water rescues. It includes suits to accommodate both the fire station 1 and 2. Capital outlay, we have the 25% cost of the replacement of the pumper truck, the demo that the city will be pursuing. Rather than refurbishing the existing truck, we're pursuing the purchase of a demo. 25% is included here, and the other costs are split among the other tourism funds. Under Muni A tax, we have 17%. You can see the split of this 17% cost of the self-contained breathing apparatus expenditure there. Under hospitality tax, we don't have any significant changes under non-capital tools and equipment. It includes an annual provision for bunker gear and hose and appliances. But under capital outlay, you can see an increase, actually a decrease, since part of the FY21 number included the expense, part of the expense for the rehabilitation of the public safety building. But here you can see we have allocated $42,000 for the replacement of the second pickup truck, the replacement of an ATV, and that'll be at a higher cost than initially contemplated, because it does include an ambulatory package for responding to emergencies on the beach. And we've also included an extrication tool for Station 2 so that we can equip that station with the same equipment as public safety building. And then last, under state accommodations tax capital outlay, we have the final 25% of the cost to replace the pumper truck and the remaining 17% to replace the self-contained breathing apparatus. Was there anything else that you think that we needed to add or explain of the new additions, inclusions to the FY22 budget?
There are going to be some things that we need to discuss. I don't know that necessarily we'll get them hammered out right here. We just learned that one of the additions to the building when they put it in is what is known as DOAUs on the roof. These are units that create the positive pressure in our building that keep it from having the issues that we had that led us to where we are. But anyways, those are piped with, I believe, I don't want to get it wrong, it's either 1 or 1.5 inch piping for the propane that we use. So during the winter months, it actually utilizes from our propane tank to help heat the building in the process. And what we're finding is there was, I guess, as far as I was concerned, if the discussion happened prior to me being a part, I'm not aware of that. But what we found was all of a sudden we were out of gas, and we're filling up quite quickly now during the winter months. Now it will be seasonal, but there is the need to look at what that adjustment may be. We are looking at some options right now. The in-ground tank is leased, and so we're locked in with the vendor that we are to have it filled up. What we've learned is that if we were to purchase the tank, we could choose our own vendor and we can almost cut our fuel costs in half. So anyways, there's a whole lot of things that we have to play out and get those numbers to you guys so we can figure it out. But that's something that we definitely have to look at. And then I think next month we were going to try, Ms. Desiree, tell me if I'm wrong, but we had in discussion the purchase of tables and chairs for the training room, but we'll bring that up on the next one. So
Thank you. Any other questions on? None. All right, moving on to the next subject. Discussion of angled parking on the non-ocean side of Palm Boulevard between 22nd and 40th Avenue. And I'll let Desiree kick off that discussion with the events of the last few days, prior week.
Yeah, sure. As I've updated you all recently, Secretary of Transportation Christy Hall had requested a meeting with me and our public safety folks and the mayor, and that meeting happened on Monday. And the goal of that meeting was to continue to the discussions and conversations about improving pedestrian safety, parking on the island, and improving beach traffic flow on our community. As we all know, we are a seasonal community, and although the season continues to extend past beyond what we would like it to be, although we do enjoy it ourselves. But we had a productive conversation with her and her team. It included the Deputy Secretary of Transportation also attended the meeting, and Robert Perry, the Director of Traffic Engineering, and Tim Henderson from the District 6 office. Couple of things that were discussed there is, as the DOT, as you all know, owns the parking lot along Breach Inlet, and they want to explore increasing parking along that section of Breach Inlet. The bulk of the conversation with our public safety group was along Palm Boulevard, and council recently had a meeting where it decided to continue conversations with DOT about optimizing safe parking on the island and enhancing safe parking on the island. And that's what we wanted to talk to you about, because we think that it's something that the city should consider continuing to discuss with DOT as it relates to the parking on the land side of Palm Boulevard between 21st and 41st. As you all know, a couple of years ago, the city moved to parallel parking in that area. After living with parallel parking on both sides of Palm, I'll let, in a little bit, I'll let Chief Cornett maybe speak to some of the challenges that we have seen with parallel parking, increased traffic collisions in that area. Could be, triggered by several issues, but I'll let him speak to that in a minute. So when looking at trying to optimize and enhance safe parking in that area, that is where most of the bulk of the people that come to visit the island come to. The discussion revolved around angled parking as a potential solution. Angled parking on the land side of Palm would allow a couple of things. It would push the people that are coming to visit or parking in that area, would push them farther away from the pavement and from the vehicular lane of traffic. It could also open up an area of the shoulder that could be available for vehicles that are on Palm Boulevard whenever there is traffic backed up, which again happens quite often in the summer, to be able to pull away from the road onto the shoulder and allow emergency vehicles to pass through. If angled parking is done in a way that it creates that it's slight enough, it has a slight enough angle that the vehicles could still park head in from the eastbound lane without necessarily having to do a U-turn and migrate into the residential communities to then parallel park. So we're exploring some of the benefits that pursuing angled parking in that area would yield to our community, not only to the residents, but also to the visitors that come on the island. So I'll let Chief Cornett and Hathaway, they both attended the meeting with me and the mayor, and think that this might be a solution that could solve some of the concerns that we have expressed with the volume of parking and the way that parking is organized on Palm Boulevard. And this is something that you all know every year year after a season, we go through what worked, what didn't work, what could be improved. And I think that is sort of part of that conversation that we can work with DOT to improve.
Jimmy, question?
Yes, sir. This is kind of a firebrand, but I need to put it out there. Desiree, what do we say to all the citizens that have sent us? I've received, I'm sure other members have received well over 100 emails saying that we should stop negotiating with SCDOT and just pursue legal action. I don't know about the other two committee members, but I've received well over 100 letters, and they're all cut and paste. I'd like to know if the other committee members have received the same thing. And we're kind of on the hot seat here. And when, I don't mind that. I took the job knowing things like this were going to come up, but we get this mail every day. Before we proceed any further, could you give us some indication or some guidance about how to respond?
Jimmy, let me jump in before we put Desiree on that same hot seat. I think a couple points of clarification. Desiree and I have had discussion. I think the public needs to understand that both the mayor and Desiree are not negotiating, right? So I'm not defending in any way, shape, or form Secretary Hall's actions, because I completely disagree with her on all fronts. And I was going to bring this up later anyway. My own opinion is until such time that S40 is withdrawn or suitably amended, it would not make sense for council to move on any item that goes against the vote that we took the last time affirming our 2015 plan and subsequent amendments. Okay. So whether I think it's a separate discussion of over time, does angled parking make additional sense? I don't have the answer to it. I will tell you on the surface level for me, and what I'd like to hear from administration and our public safety officers, I think it's another problem waiting to happen, right? I don't know how without physical markings and infrastructure and ongoing maintenance, that it's not a further encumbrance on the city, all to solve a problem that, is really the issue of an overabundance of people wishing to park along Palm Boulevard, right? So I can only say for myself, nothing has changed in my opinion. I think it was egregious to proceed with the connector without discussion with the city. I think it's another attempt from SCDOT to usurp in a lot of ways the rights of the city and what we feel is in the interest of public safety. And to those letters, yes, we've all heard them loud and clear. It's something for full council to weigh in on, and I would ask Councilmember Pounds to weigh in as well. I'm not in favor of any change until I see S40 and its impingement on home rule removed. Philip, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, Desiree was headed down the path with Half and Chief. I'd love to hear just their thoughts. I mean, I don't disagree with you, Randy. It feels like the maintenance of angled parking, not knowing the conversations that have happened, it seems like it's a maintenance addition for us for sure. But
hey, just adding one thing to that, and I'd like to hear in the same response from the chief. When we had perpendicular parking and crowding, the normal occurrence was we'd just drive straight through over the sidewalks and come back around. It was awful.
And I just want to add a little bit of clarification. That was part of the discussion that we all had with the SADOT team, is that what kind of infrastructure would need to be in place in order to direct people to know that they're supposed to angle park, how far into the right of way they should park to allow for that space to open up. That would allow vehicles to maybe back in, obviously, depending on the type of vehicle, back in onto the shoulder rather than backing in directly onto Palm when they're trying to exit the parking spot. So there are benefits, there are potential benefits with this system. And from my perspective and from the perspective of the police and fire department, what we're looking at is continuing to enhance safer conditions for our community. We always have conversations with state partners that we have to work with, because they do own the road. They have been improving some of the shoulder system. We also talked about increasing maintenance there, drainage. So I certainly understand the position that the city council is in, but from my perspective, what I've been instructed to do with council is to continue a conversation with them with a collaborative mindset to try to find a solution to all the parking issues, traffic issues, pedestrian safety issues that we every year we have. So the conversations that I'm having with the DOT team are from that angle. And they've been obviously including our public safety folks that are experts in this area. So again, I think at angled parking
is money part of that discussion? Who pays for all this?
Well, our position is that any of these changes would have to be paid by SCDOT if this is something that they're supportive of as well. Obviously, there's always a cost share and a partnership associated with anything that we have done. In the past, any changes that the city has done to the parking plan have been paid for by the city.
That's right.
So I think that there is an opportunity for collaboration on that end as well. Hopefully that answered the question in terms of, what the city does legally, that it's really a policy decision by city council. What we are trying to do is continue a conversation that leverages the resources from the state agencies to create better and safer conditions for everybody in our community.
But let's hear from the chiefs, and we come back to further discussion.
Perfect. I'll jump in first, since I think we deal with parking most frequently. We pulled the stats when we were looking at all these things versus perpendicular and parallel when we did those. And, we do see that switching to parallel, I think there were more collisions with the parallel parking than there were with the perpendicular. And so it gives the option that we need to look at something that maybe we can enhance the safety. And when we looked at the little sketch they drew of the angle parking, we did address that there would need to be something put in place by DOT to indicate where these parking spots were. But what I really liked about it was that it left spot for a vehicle to park angled and then back out into the, still in the right of way, not into a lane of traffic. And that would give them a better view to pull out onto the lane of traffic to resume moving forward. And it also leaves that space that should an emergency vehicle come through Palm Boulevard, there is space, adequate space for vehicles to get out of the roadway to clear for those emergency vehicles to travel through. We did talk and about how there would have to be something put in place to indicate where they were, and that this would take a lot of work. It wasn't something that was going to happen overnight, because we'd want to have a well-developed plan so that there was no confusion about how a vehicle would park, and it would definitely take more conversations. But it did appear with what they drew that that was a safer approach that I think could eliminate some of the collisions that we've already had while providing adequate room for emergency vehicles to travel down Palm Boulevard.
Yeah, I guess the question that goes with that, Desiree, we looked at, going back to the last time I was on public safety, those embedded in-ground markers that are incredibly expensive. But the premise of, just for me, you look at what you do in any parking lot is pull up against a concrete strip, which is unsightly and additional maintenance, trimming and all that, or something that's permanently marking done correctly with the right amount of money. It seems like an incredibly expensive endeavor. And, to the comment of sharing with SCDOT, the sharing doesn't appear to have worked very well ever along Palm Boulevard in terms of expense and maintenance. So I think you have a highly skeptical community about any sharing of real responsibility. And that should be very much part of discussions. Again, discussions, not negotiations.
Another thing that I wanted to mention is obviously timing is critical. We can continue to have this discussion regarding safety on Boulevard, but we would need to understand the timing, because I would not be supportive of implementing anything not implementing the right thing right during the season or right before the season, because there's an education component that would have to accompany this whole initiative. So I'm hopeful that we can find a way to safely do this, doing it the right way, not rushed, because at the end of the day, it could create, if it's not done right, it could create a chaotic situation for our public safety folks in our community to manage during this peak summer season. So just wanted to make sure that you all understood that a timing component is very important here as well.
Desiree, is your belief that this would be done for this season by SCDOT, not by the city?
I think that they are motivated to find a resolution to some of the issues that we have on Palm Boulevard. Whether or not that motivation can translate to action in a reasonable amount of time, we don't know yet. I know that is something that they are they'll be discussed.
I think I'll just weigh in myself and let the others weigh in. But I think any assumption that we would make a significant change this year is foolish at best. I mean, we're in the season. Let's be realistic. It'll be April in a few weeks, and the season gets closer and closer, and we get more crowded and more crowded. And this is a dramatic, significant change that I don't think we should even begin to entertain, and particularly begin to entertain while S40 is sitting out there that basically says we're going to usurp your rights anyway. So, I would just recommend for discussion purposes that they understand. You can discuss, good changes over time, but not coming into our season. That's ludicrous. Jimmy or Philip?
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Think about changing this point.
Hathaway, you got any?
I would say, I support and agree wholeheartedly with, what Desiree and Chief Cornett have already brought forward. I will say that I personally have responded in both configurations, whether it be parallel or in perpendicular. Both were manageable. I can't speak to how many spots it adds or anything like that. That doesn't even concern me really. It's the ability to make sure that we can get the resources and the help that needs to be brought to the citizens and the visitors of the island. That we get them what is needed. I would speak to, with our staffing levels, we rely heavily on outside resources to back up, our department. So, and time is everything in what we do with the fire department. So, any delay to the help that we need to do the job that we do is a danger to our personnel. It's a danger to the citizens. And so, for us, it's just about, and I think infrastructure is key. Adding that infrastructure that defines those areas and keeps it clear and better for us is exactly what we need. So again, I would just support what's already been said and just let it be known, that ability to get the resources and the help to where it needs to go as quickly as possible is crucial. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Moving on. Item 5C, discussion of parking 4 feet off pavement rule along Palm Boulevard between 41st and 57th. So I will say I had a resident bring this subject up. I think a lot of it's born out of the ongoing construction parking that we've seen from, really from 42nd down to 57th. So I asked to add this. I went down to physically inspect myself and understand where the signage was not. And when you look at the 4 feet off pavement signage coming, towards City Center, it begins at 47th Avenue, roughly around the Citadel, and comes forward to City Center. From 47th to 57th, there is no signage indicating 4 feet off pavement. So Desiree and I had a conversation this morning. What does our ordinance require? And Desiree, if I misstate, please correct me. The ordinance actually ends at 41st. We have the ability under the ordinance to add signage, which we've done down to 47th. If you look from, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
53rd. So currently the 4 feet off.
I'm talking about where it is physically now, Desiree, not where we can go, right?
Okay.
So the missing piece of where we can go is 47th to 53rd. Once you get past 53rd, there is a drainage ditch. And the question I asked of Desiree, do we have the ability to say 4 feet off pavement from 53rd to 57th, knowing that if you're dumb enough to park in the drainage ditch 4 feet off pavement, I suppose you could do that. I think at a minimum, we need to look at increasing the signage down to 53rd so that people are clear the same problems exist, from 47th to 53rd that we have on the balance of that roadway. So Desiree, with that, I will turn it over to you for further advice.
Well, you're right. The current restrictions on the 4 feet off pavement rule extend through 53rd. There's only parking on the land side of Palm, as you all know, between 41st and 57th. Past 53rd, there is an open ditch. And if the city were to implement the 4 feet off pavement rule, in that section, we're basically inviting people to park inside the ditch. It's not a safe condition. Ultimately, it would be our public safety personnel, public works having to deal with situations with cars being stuck on the ditch. So if that is the goal, if the goal is to avoid having vehicles parking too close to the pavement, the only option there would be is just to have a no parking zone between 53rd and 57th. We do need to have parking available in that area so that the city can meet the state's minimum requirements of parking to be eligible for beach renourishment funding and to meet the public access definition. So that is really the reason why the 4 feet off pavement rule ends at 53rd. There is no space past that to safely allow vehicles to park. The reality is that the reason we're seeing a lot of parking there is associated with the construction, the hotel construction. We don't see a lot of day tripper parking along that section of Palm Boulevard. It is something that the chief has been working on with Wild Dunes, just making sure that folks are, parking legally and just constantly reminding and enforcing those rules out there. But, there's just a limitation because of the existence of that drainage ditch that we just have to be.
So Desiree, I think this is where this kind of heads, right? So the same safety concerns, parking on the road and opening doors into the road. And now I look at what's happening with the hotel down at 57th, right? So we haven't gotten there yet. And we're going to, personally, I'd eliminate parking from 53rd to 57th. I think the risk to beach funding is minimal compared to the safety concerns. So you now have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that whole traffic flow to the hotel is coming down to 57th, right? That's the intent of Wild Dunes. So now you're going to say from 53rd to 57th, it's okay to park in essence on the pavement with an extenuating traffic circumstance approaching us come April. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's something we don't have a lot of control over, short of probably eliminating parking from 53rd to 57th. But I don't want to be the one responsible for a parent's stupid actions with their children trying to park in the flow of weekend hotel traffic coming down there. We have no clue how bad it's going to be. It's not going to make the island better in terms of traffic flow. So Philip, you're obviously pretty intimate with Wild Dunes and what's going on down there, but seems to me we ought to get in front of this issue.
Yeah, and Randy, so what's got this on the agenda?
It was a citizen request because we didn't, at a minimum, we didn't do the signage down to 53rd. And I think, that to me is just a no-brainer. There's 4 feet, ample room, make it clear to everyone. When I drove down there, there were plenty of cars, 1-2 feet off the pavement. It's sort of the norm of the construction traffic. I think when you get beyond that, as Desiree well stated, the ditch, if you're driving your big construction Jeep, you can probably park in the ditch, no big deal. But I don't personally want to see, the beach push, if you will, down there into the hotel flow traffic because they're parked right on the pavement. And Philip, correct me, or Desiree, correct me, that's also the exit for the hotel as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so now you're going to have cars parked on the pavement with all the hotel directed traffic on weekends. And, I think one thing with the hotel, it's not going to be the same Sunday checkout. It'll be all during the week as well. But it just seems like a problem waiting to happen that we might want to get in front of.
Just a clarification. The vehicles don't park on the pavement. They are parked on the right of way.
Right up to the pavement.
Yeah.
Correct. It's closer to the pavement because of that 4 feet off limitation. That's certainly something that we can look into from a public safety. I'll talk to Chief Cornett and Hathaway about that and see what we can do. Just as a reminder, we are installing, Wild Dunes Resort is installing crosswalks along that section, just recognizing, that.
Yeah, no, that's appreciated. And yeah.
And historically, before the construction of this hotel, we did not really see a lot of parking in that area. And it could happen, but typically the parking issues or challenges we've mostly faced between 21st and 41st. That is what takes up sort of the volume of the parking. But we can certainly look into this a little bit differently, knowing that the opening of this hotel and the traffic that's going to be.
And Desiree, 2 points of clarification. In no way am I blaming Wild Dunes hotel properties for causing a problem. I think it's an acknowledgement that parking has pushed further and further towards 57th. I can tell you personal perspective that the parking from 42nd continuing down the non-beach side has grown tremendously in the last couple of years. Agreed. It's going to continue to grow with the pressures we have on parking. And I just don't want to see a problem emerging that we didn't anticipate. That's not the fault of the hotel, but it certainly does create public safety issues. Jimmy, please.
Do we have a projected opening date for the hotel?
End of the month,
End of
23rd,
this month.
24th. Yeah.
March.
March.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Desiree, you're talking 4 blocks, you know, and to Randy's point, I mean, that whole entrance area back there between the owner's entrance and the new resort entrance. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many parking places we're talking about. I don't think we're talking about
No.
very many. Yeah, and I would fully support looking at this and bringing it back for further discussion and possible elimination. But that's, Randy, to your point, the resort is attempting to bring all traffic into that back gate.
Yeah.
So the front gate will just be resident for the most part. So your traffic is significantly going to increase, you know, back in that stretch for sure.
Another topic that I did want to highlight from our conversations with the DOT and with police and fire is looking into reducing the speed limit on Palm Boulevard as another mitigation to traffic and pedestrian safety. So just wanted to mention that's also something that we've asked in the past to be looked at, and hopefully we can continue that conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, Desiree, the comments we've gotten back before is there's not, just like everything on the island, there's not enough volume to warrant extra crosswalks, reduce speed limits, you know, absent actions just from them, right?
Yes, I mean, that's been the typical response whenever speed studies are conducted.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's a new element here with the hotel diverting traffic all the way down to 57 that we didn't have before. Previous times we have requested this analysis.
Yeah, nope, I'm with you. Thank you.
Just going back to earlier conversation, Desiree, I would encourage the chief and yourself to let's understand how they're doing their traffic counts, because the numbers you've shared certainly don't correlate with our experience on the island. So, okay, I think we can move to item 6, highlights of the departmental reports with fire department first.
Thank you. So, summary of February 2021. We had 46 calls, which basically mirrors exactly how we were last year. There's 86 total calls year to date, which is 2% less than where we were the year prior. And again, I just kind of breeze through and give you the notable stuff here. The breakdown of the 46 calls we had was 1 fire-related call, which was a fire that occurred on Sullivan's Island, 24 EMS calls, 3 hazmat-related calls, 1 service call, and then 17 to qualify as other. If you go to the notable events and call highlights, again, we try to continue to make sure that our stockpile of PPE for COVID-related response is always good. We responded to a fuel spill at the gas station on Palm Boulevard. There was 4 gallons that had spilled. We were able to clean that up. We responded to a boat that became stuck on a sandbar out from 8 Summers Dunes Lane. Again, no real issue there. The individuals on the boat were able to get it off of the sandbar and get it back in the water. We did respond to Sullivan's Island for a structure fire. Our crews did assist in the confinement, the extinguishment, as well as the salvage and overhaul operations for that call. And then the last notable call we had was an auto versus pedestrian, which was resulted in the pedestrian being put under trauma alert, sent to the hospital. It was a very bad call. So that is all I have for notable events. The rest of the pages are simply no more than our analytics that, you know, you're welcome to look through. If you have questions, please feel free to ask.
So half the one question I had of Desiree this morning is, you know, to try to circumvent speculation from residents and others regarding the serious accident. And I know I don't think we have the full accident investigative report yet, but from your experience in dealing with it, did we have increased difficulty both getting to the victim and getting that victim off the island as a consequence of changes on the connector?
No, and because of the environment that we're in, I definitely had gone straight to that to try to see if there was any kind of changes. On this particular call, there was not. I'll tell you that a Delta unit, which is the EMS supervisor, it does entail a paramedic. They were on scene 1 minute after we were, and then the actual medic, the ambulance, was 3 minutes after we were on scene. So I didn't see anything there that spoke to any issues. Cause you got to understand time of day as well, and those kind of things. It's not a heavy traffic time. We're still in our down season, and I know we're starting to see the busy season coming upon us, but we're still in a downtime. So, you know, I will continue to monitor those analytics, which, you know, you guys read my reports every month, so you know that's what I do. And we're going to monitor heavily. You know, what kind of impacts are we having to the island here and our residents? Based on, you know, those current environments. You know, we want to monitor that and make sure that we're giving you guys the information that you need so that we can make the right decisions and do what's best for the people on the island. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Hathaway, I do read y'all's reports. I appreciate the analytics, so thank you for doing that.
Okay, no further questions. We'll move to the police report.
Good morning still. Bear with us on our reports. As I mentioned last month, we switched our records management system. And so we're still trying to figure out how we're going to get the data because it's coming from different locations now. And our analytical report will be included in the future, but we worked until pretty late yesterday afternoon trying to figure what we've got here out and get it right. So just bear with us.
Patience granted.
Chief, I read yours too, man. Come on.
Yeah.
So for us, 11 drug charges for the month, 7 DUIs, 53 traffic related charges. And we are the investigating agency for the vehicle collision that was referenced earlier. It was an individual on a skateboard versus a motor vehicle, and it is still currently under investigation. We did call Mount Pleasant Traffic Unit, and they did come out to assist us in recreating the scene so that we could do a thorough investigation. It is still pending, and as soon as it's available, we'll reach out to the family and talk to them. There has been some media inquiries about it. I do want to. I was going to do a social media post here in a little bit, but I know there are some rumors floating around that it was one of our vehicles involved in the collision. I want to clarify that none of our vehicles were involved in the collision. The one that a lot of our residents are talking about was actually blocking the scene to protect evidence so that we could do a thorough investigation. We were not involved. We are just investigating.
Thank you.
Aside from that, calls for, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt, Chief, but I think it's important. You had the key word when you said there was a lot of rumors floating around about this incident. That's all it is rumors. So thank you for clarifying that. And,
yes, sir.
We look forward to the report coming out.
Yeah.
We acknowledge that with this, we could have done a social media post to get a little more information out that might have stopped some of those rumors. But we are going to do something today to kind of quell some of those things that are going around. And we'll do better in the future to make sure we get that information out faster. But it was a sensitive wreck. We are a small island, and most people know individuals that live here. And we were really concerned about wanting to make sure that the family did not find out through social media of something going on.
Yeah, good call.
Great call.
So for us, you can see all the information on there. All of this is accurate. The reports by offenses down at the bottom, those are incident reports for those types of offenses that came out. And then you can see on our charges over on the side that we're working on some of those. And I know in the past we talked about golf carts pertaining to, as Charleston City was bumping up their golf cart initiative. We are following suit a little bit, maybe not to the extreme. They are booting all golf carts that are parked in the right of way that are not registered. I don't know that we're necessarily there because I don't know that we have enough boots to do that. But what we are doing is we've put out a process or a plan that starting next week, each week, we will be advertising on all of our social media platforms to talk about golf carts and the regulations pertaining to them. We will also be using, we've kind of held off a little bit longer because our golf carts really don't start picking up until around now. We'll start to see the huge increase. So starting in the next week or two, we'll start any of them that are in the right of way that are not registered. We'll put one of our flyers, our brochures on that we have so that they can see what the regulations are. And really starting in about the second week of April is when we will do a heavy approach to enforcing all of the registration as well as all the other golf carts. I think we've given a lot of fair warning over social media. We're going to give one last push, and then it's really that we're going to step up enforcement opportunities to get our point across. Also included in our plan is to talk to all of our rental agencies to make sure that they are aware and that they're sharing that information with their guests, because a lot of time people rent a home and there's a golf cart there and they may not understand the rules and regulations. So we really want to make sure that we're doing all we can to educate before we enforce and write tickets. And I think that's our report for the month. Do you have any questions for me?
Chief, just one here, notable, as I read this, you get to lay in bed and read police reports. There's just something wrong with your life at this point. But arrests are really up significantly year on year. Can you comment on that?
So I think some of that's going to be pertaining to the way we're reporting them. I don't know that we accounted for all of our non-custodial arrests in the past. So there's different ways you can be arrested. You can be arrested custodial and taken to the jail. You can be arrested, issued a citation for a charge, and released. Those would be for criminal charges. And we're doing a better job at counting for those non-custodial arrests, which is sometimes referred to as a field book, where we issue a citation and release you on scene. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where that number is coming from. But I will also say that the DUIs have been increasing, and each DUI is a custodial arrest. And as those numbers go up and our drug numbers go up, which have consistently been increasing, then you'll see more charges and arrests on the form.
Yeah, I guess it begs the question: what can we as a city do about it? One thing, and I understand trying to get the data together on the reports, but personally, I love those hotspot, red, green, yellow reports that tell you where the problems are. And if we have issues at Front Beach, some of that is conversational with, business owners, it would seem. So, but just keep rolling our eyes at the numbers. They're disturbing. The trends are disturbing.
And we find we've done more interviews with the media about DUIs, because that is a really concerning movement to me, that those numbers are increasing in the method that they are. And we're trying to see if we can get media attention out about it, just really raise awareness to DUIs and the fact that they're not just being arrested is one problem, but you could hurt somebody or take somebody's life when you're driving impaired. So we want to do a better job at getting that message out, but that is concerning to us as well.
Yeah, and I would think with the lifting of restrictions and restaurants back to full capacity in bars, then the trend's not going to get better. And so thank you for what you're doing. I do appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Philip.
Brandon, real quick, and Chief, this may not belong here, but as Hath mentioned, our traffic is certainly starting to pick up. Spring breaks are getting ready to pick up. And it seems like the DOT cameras, particularly the connector camera, is very hit or miss. I know you guys are having conversations with DOT. I don't know if this comes up or not, but is there anything we can do there from a notification standpoint to them, or is it an automatic notification to DOT when it's not working, or do you know?
It's more on our end when it goes down. We maintain them, and we have recently reached out to the vendor that maintains those and had them come out and look at them. It seems like every year when the busyness starts to kick up is when these things stop working. Which is contrary to what we want. But I did have a meeting yesterday with another camera vendor because we are trying to look at something that we could put in place that will be more reliable, because we rely on these cameras a lot, not just us, but people coming to visit, people who live on the island. They're really important.
And just as a clarification, Councilmember Pounds, the city, the camera that's at the end of the connector, that's something that was paid for by the city, and it's paid for the maintenance, and the service is paid for by the city. The camera that's on the opposite side on Rifle Range before the connector, the first cost were covered by the Charleston County. However, the city now pays for the maintenance. After the first year, each municipality pays for the maintenance and for the service. So it is something that we handle, And we've been trying to find alternatives to make them more reliable, just like Chief said. But they're just connected to the DOT 511 system.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No further questions on the reports. We'll move on to miscellaneous business. We have one item of miscellaneous business that was born out of the Personnel Committee, and I'd like to make a motion to add to discussion next steps regarding the filling of the fire chief position.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Wait, stop. Oh, I'm sorry. What is the motion?
To add an agenda item to discuss next steps regarding the open position of fire chief.
And that would be for full council or next?
It's for
Or talk about it right now?
here. It's to
Here.
talk about it right now. Just
Here.
discuss.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So Desiree, I'll let you lead off with what you led off with the Personnel Committee, because these really do dovetail to one another and what the intent was coming out of personnel.
Sure. I've reported to City Council, the offer that had been made for the fire chief position has been declined. And we brought this up with the personnel yesterday for discussions about next steps. Personnel Committee did not make a recommendation, a formal recommendation, but there seemed to be consensus about wanting to open up the process again and start accepting new applications. So before instructing staff to begin that process, the comment was made to bring this up to public safety for discussion to see whether the majority of the group agreed with that approach, and just give additional guidance to the staff.
So Desiree, you said the Personnel Committee is recommending open it back up. You said.
They didn't make a formal motion, but from the discussion, there seems to be that the majority of the committee agreed that to be the right approach. There was some conversation as well about the process. There's confidence around the process that the city and the joint hiring committee followed. However, there may be opportunities for improving that. And so part of the conversation the personnel had was what kind of changes to the process the committee can embrace to hopefully ensure that the final candidate that is recommended by the hiring committee has the full support of City Council.
I think I'll add commentary since I was in that meeting. Councilmember Moy, Chair Moy of Personnel, did explain and acknowledge not a perfect process, but it's the process that brought Chief Cornett here. It's a process that has Desiree in that job. It is the process at this point. I think the two choice points in this, do you simply go down a list and go, well, candidate 1, 2, 3, 4? It was not, the majority opinion was we're not simply going down the list. It was to reopen, but it was also to reconvene the combined committee and bring a recommendation forward. I think at the same time, Desiree had sent to all of us in a letter doing, I don't know, Desiree, you call it an assessment, but similar to what we did with the police department pretty rapidly. I'm still disturbed with the outcome. I think when there's a majority in the process that, there should be majority support at the end of that process. And I'm concerned going forward that we go through another process that yields a similar result. So I think it's purposeful to have the committees combined have that discussion in a good proactive way to figure out, what went right, what went wrong, and what do we do about it. Did I state that well, Desiree?
So what are we looking for today out of this committee, Randy or Desiree?
We just, I think, I don't know if we need a vote. Did we actually vote in personnel, Desiree? We have so many. I didn't think so.
No, there was no.
We will have Chair Moy call a reconvened special meeting of the combined committees to give Desiree clear direction on next steps.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I guess the question is, do we go back to the same applications that we have on file? we open it up again to accept new applications and, go through the process again?
I think that's a discussion for that combined committee, frankly.
Correct.
Yeah. Jimmy?
Desiree, did you say that? Maybe I misunderstood you, but I think I heard you say something about the goal would be a full council recommendation.
Well, I think that.
Is that correct?
Well, I was reacting to the comments from the Personnel Committee and sharing some of the discussion that happened in that committee, and whether or not that should or is or would be a goal of this council. I think that the conversation was around what changes or modifications to the process the city or the hiring committee could implement and embrace to ensure that everybody is behind at least the process that takes it to another offer for the fire chief position.
Okay, so we're just looking at going back through the process. At this point, we're not looking at any opinions or recommendations from any individual council members at this point, correct? I mean, we're just looking at this vote is just to go open it back up and look at the process. Is that correct?
Correct. I think that the goal of adding this item to the agenda is, as public safety was part of the joint hiring committee that went through the process to get some feedback on where you all might be, knowing that there's an upcoming special joint meeting where that discussion will take place and that formal direction would be given at that point.
Right, but you don't want any feelings about what the individual committee members from this committee feels about the selection process at this time. Is that correct?
It's certain. Yeah, I mean, we weren't soliciting it, but it's welcome.
Oh, well, okay. Well, just put it out there because it's going to come later on, and I don't mean to get anything started. But if you're asking how I'm feeling about it, I would prefer that we go with just go ahead and offer the job to Jason and stay in house. Just putting it out there. That's all.
I would expect that conversation to continue in the combined committees.
Yeah,
Right.
and I guess that's where it's headed, Randy. And that's my reason for asking. I mean, I think bringing the combined committees back together to look at the process and decide to go inside or outside is absolutely the right next step.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. With that, we don't have executive session on here, and the only item remaining would be, Phil.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, sorry, you got miscellaneous business. Sorry, Randy.
No, that was miscellaneous business.
With our next meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. The next meeting date is 3 p.m. Thursday, April 1st. And thank you both for agreeing to the change. I had a family issue I have to deal with this afternoon. I appreciate the change, but we'll go back to 3 p.m. Thursday. Do we want it on April Fool's Day? It's the only question.
Yeah, that is a concern.
Seems appropriate to me, but
yeah, it might be appropriate.
To the committee, I will not be here that day, so you can move forward with the meeting without me.
No. Let's change it.
Oh.
Too many bad vibes. If
I'll be here.
Fool's Day and we don't have
Fool's Day without Desiree. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Ron
too
will
much.
be here, and the chiefs
Ron's
will
here. Yeah, let's keep it. I'll be out of town as well, but I'll be able to join. So,
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you both.